All right. um, so in this video, I'd like to talk with you about the 1290 prophecy, and I'd like to go over, basically what it's about. And the conclusion that you'll see is just absolutely profound and miraculous, and the evidences and the scripture and everything that it shows and adds up to is it just a powerful conclusion that cannot be denied. It's just a miracle, and we're going to approach this scientifically together. We're going to study the text together scientifically, that is, logically and with rational thought. And we're going to go by the text, by what the scripture says, and not just interpretation and paraphrase. We're going to look at the actual text together. So you're about to see the most miraculous and wondrous thing the Bible has, the Bible tells. It's just a miracle. And so get ready. This is going to be a lot of fun. Well, let's see. Before I close that down, let's take a look at this together. I don't know if you can see that. You may want to take a screenshot and adjust the light. But basically what you have at the top is 3 loaves of bread. That's Matthew 16:3. No, that's actually Matthew 13:33, the 3 loaves of bread prophecy. And in Matthew 16:3, Jesus calls it the sign of the times. Basically, once he's crucified, 3 days later, he will rise again. Now in Isaiah 61, well, let's see what this says first. Matthew 24:14, the gospel is going to be preached to all the nations of the world. To all the nations and to all the world. So that will have to be reached at a later date and time. It can't be until, like, America's discovered. So it's not going to be anywhere near, like, after Jesus was crucified. So this is what this is showing. I take a lot of notes based on scripture, and I just put it all down, try to represent it graphically. So Matthew 16 through 17, Matthew 24, 16 through 17, and 37 through 39, or maybe 41. It talks about a great flood coming. And Matthew, let's see, that there was actually one of the greatest floods in recorded history in America. And it tells you it's going to be in America in Matthew 24, 26 through 28. It gives you the location, basically an eagle, and from east to west like lightning. And that's what happened in the prophesied year, which we'll get to. I'm going to explain more of this in detail later. Okay, so so what we're talking about here is the year of God's favor, or the day of vengeance. This is Isaiah 61, and that's the X, that's the first bread. So that's basically when the promised one's going to come. It's going to be God's favor to the righteous and God's vengeance to the sinners who reject him. It also talks about the garment of salvation in Isaiah 61. Salvation means Jesus. The name Jesus is related to the word salvation. And garment means kingdom. And so the first loaf of bread is the kingdom of Jesus Christ. Let's see what else it says. And we're going to assume a single portion for the first loaf of bread, because Isaiah, although it talks about the garment of salvation, basically the kingdom of Jesus Christ, the age, the epoch of Jesus Christ, it also talks about the garment of praise, or the kingdom of praise, and it's going to be run by strangers, or foreigners, or the Jews have a word for that, the Gentiles. They're going to feed on the wealth of nations. In other words, they're going to have power. They're going to rule, and they're going to have a double portion. So instead of one loaf of bread, their kingdom is going to take up 2 loaves of bread, or basically the epoch of Jesus Christ times 2. All right, so let's see what else it says. Make ... praise spring forth. Okay, so yeah, the dispensation of Jesus is going to make this dispensation of praise spring forth. And it says blessed. It says that the dispensation of the blessed of praise, they're going to be blessed of the Lord. It's talking about the Abrahamic blessing given to Ishmael. And okay, you got the messianic period. So in Matthew 24, when the disciples ask about when will these things be, what will be the sign of the coming and the end of the age? Well, the word age is from Enos. We'll look at that up soon, hopefully, together. And in particular, the definition given at Bible Hub of the Greek word Enos, it says it refers to a messianic period. So this first loaf of bread is talking about the Messiah Jesus and his epoch, the messianic period. So let's see that we're looking at the next period now. Ah, yes. So at the end of the second 2 loaves of bread, the year 1260 is given. That's repeated 7 times in Revelation, 2 times in Daniel, 9 times altogether in the Holy Bible. In one place of Revelation, it talks about at the year 1260 AH, it talks about a woman clothed in the sun, basically the kingdom of the star, the sun, and the moon under her feet, and 12 stars on her head, making a crown. So that's in Revelations 12, 1 through 6. And it's also talking about this woman is going to be chased by a red dragon with 10 horns. So again, you have the theme of there's going to be good stuff about the day of God, and there's going to be bad stuff about the day of God. It's the day of vengeance, Isaiah 61, and the year of the Lord's favor. So that also shows up in Matthew 24, that theme. So let's see what we have down here. 2520 years from when the literal abomination makes desolate was put in the holy place, which happened in 677 BC. There's many sources on that show that. 2520 years later, which is 7 times later, and you get to what's it say? 7 times later, according to Leviticus 26, it says that's what you should observe. Apparently, that's the end of the punishments in a major way, or the major redemption is going to come at that time. So that's when the sanctuary is properly restored. We're looking at Daniel 8:14, and it comes to that time 2,300 years from 457 BC. The source for that is Ptolemy's Canon of Kings, when the decree was set forth to rebuild the temple. Well, that comes to the same year as 1260 AH on that calendar, the Muslim calendar, and all these things all come to the same year. The great flood, greatest flood in America, in American recorded history, was given at that time, that one year, the year of the gate, and it tells you the location, and it's 3 times the epoch of Jesus Christ comes to that year, and at the end of the double portion, so it's all lined up. It all prophesizes the exact same thing. It is 2520 or 7 times year from when the abomination was put in the temple, but it's also 2,300 years from 457 BC when the decree went forth to rebuild Jerusalem, according to Daniel 9. The transgression that makes desolate. Yeah, it's talking about 677 BC, the idol put in the temple by King Manasseh. Now, this place is called the time of the end, that we're talking about, when The sanctuary was properly restored at the end of the 7 times, at the end of 2,300 years. It's called the time of the end in Daniel 8:17. Okay. So, yes, we're going to look at Amos 9:13. It says that there will be new wine. New wine will drip from the mountains. And when's that going to happen? Yeah. Okay. That's going to happen. Amos. It's going to happen. Quote, the word is days from when Israel is destroyed. And that takes us to 2 days or 720 years from 721 BC when Israel was destroyed. That takes you to 1 BC when Jesus was born. So that's when the new wine appeared. Jesus was the new wine. But also you go 1290 years from 721 BC when Israel was destroyed, and you get to the date when Muhammad was born. So it gives you when Jesus was born, which was 2 days later, and then 1290 years later you get to when Muhammad was born, or the praised one, which is 1290 years later. You have to do the math. I don't have it in my head right now. But if you go 1335 years later from the same anchor date, when Israel was destroyed, 1335 years later, it takes you to when Muhammad began his public ministry. So this is when the new wine dripped forth from the mountains, according to Amos 9:13. The new wine being Jesus Christ when he was born, and Muhammad's when he began his ministry, being in 1290, which is 30 years after the 1260 number mentioned 9 times in the Bible. So that's basically 7 times 180. Is that right? 7 times 180, yeah. Which is 3.5 times 360, or 3.5 times. 7 times 180 plus 30, or 3.5 times in a month. The month being the former rain, the latter rain, the first year, which you'll find in Joel and Hosea. Okay, so no, the former rain, the latter rain, the first month. Look out. All right, so where were we? Yeah, here we are. See, former rain, the latter rain. This is Joel 2:23. I go into it more in my other videos. Right now I'm just doing a quick flyby. Hopefully we can go into a lot more detail a little bit later on. But basically you have the anchor date of 721 BC when Israel was destroyed. You go forward 2 years or 2 days, you get Jesus' birth. You go forward 1290 years. This is the number that Jesus says to look at about his return, where Daniel talks about the abomination makes desolate being set in the holy place for 1290 years. So from that abomination that makes desolate of Israel being destroyed, good 1290 years later, and Muhammad was born. And 1290 years later, Muhammad was born. Jesus said that's when he's going to return in Matthew 24. So you go forward 1335 years, where it says, blessed is he who comes to 1335 at the end of Daniel, and you get to when Muhammad began his public ministry. So you get to that year. Jesus said, no man knows the day or the hour, but we know the year. So now, once Muhammad began his public ministry, you go forward 1290 more years on the Islamic calendar, and that's when Baha'u'llah began his public ministry as well. So yeah, Joel 2:24. This is called the grain, when the grain appeared, and the new wine and oil. The new wine and oil. So the new wine being Jesus was born, the new wine being Muhammad was born, and Baha'u'llah began his public ministry, and Muhammad began his public ministry. So there you have it, the former rain, the latter rain, and the new wine, the new oil, and the grain, basically the new bread. That's all given in the prophecy of Joel 2, but it's also reflected on in other prophecies, as we've just talked about briefly. So let's see what else it says. Hosea 6:2. It says let's see if we can have that. He comes as a shower to us. Hosea 6:3. Okay, that is former rain, latter rain from the heavens. Okay, it says after 2 days he will revive us in Hosea 6:2. So what's the start point of that? That's when Israel is destroyed. You go forward 2 days, you get the birth of Jesus. And that's when it says he will revive us. Now this is being very particular, after 2 days. That's 720 years from 721 BC. It says, in the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. And this is also Hosea 6:2. So basically, after 2 days being taken us to 1 BC, at the point of 1 BC and 1 AD, in the year of our Lord and before Christ, that area when Jesus was born on our calendar, that's when it, according to the Bible, according to Hosea 6:2, that's when the people will be revived and raised up so that they may live in God's sight, because that's when Jesus was born. That's when he appeared on earth, so that we can live in his sight. The promised one is alive at that time. All right, so at this prophecy, Habakkuk 3:2. Habakkuk 3:2, very special, very important. We're looking at the time, and then you have the upright aleph, and then the time, or day, upright aleph, day. And you have to look at the Hebrew to see this. It's translated day after day, but basically it can be seen. Like personally, I see it as saying that you have a period of time in the upright aleph representing Muhammad, and then another period of time we're representing the promised one. So what we have is when the abomination makes desolate was put in the temple, you go forward 1290 years, and you get when Muhammad began his public ministry. And then you go forward 1290 lunar years, and you have when Baha'u'llah began his public ministry. So you have a time in the upright aleph, and then a time. And what time is given? Not just any period of time, but 1290 years, the time that Jesus Christ has to look at regarding his return in Matthew 24, referring to the 3-year prophecy about, destroy the temple in 3 years, it will be rebuilt. And also, we have the quote, yes. There is a quote in Habakkuk 3. It talks about at the head, there will be a plague, there will be pestilence. And at the feet, there will be lightning will go forth, or burning coals, one or the other. Lightning will go forth at his feet. So at the head, that's the beginning of Muhammad's dispensation. At that time, there was the plague of Justinian, which was a major plague when masses of the world population died from this horrible pestilence and disease. And this doesn't happen all the time. This is kind of a rare event. This is major. This is the first time in history that something this major happened. Plague of Justinian. And so that prophecy was fulfilled. And at the feet of Muhammad's dispensation, towards the end of the 3-year period, the 3-day period that Jesus was talking about, basically all these things line up. They all line up. The end of the third loaf of bread. The year of the gate. The promised year of the gate. So at the end of the 1290 years, you have lightning going forth when Alexander Graham Bell asked, what hath God wrought? So let's do a little math here. All right, so you have the year that Muhammad began his public ministry. They don't know exactly when it was. It's like 614 or 615 AD. This is according to historical record. This is verifiable. We can Google this and see for ourselves. You multiply that times 3. There's your 3 loaves of bread. Why are we doing this? Well, look, the loaf of bread is this. It starts with Jesus' birth, 1 BC, beginning of the calendar. And it ends around 614 AD, somewhere around there, to 615 AD. So this is your loaf of bread. This is the Christian era before Muhammad appeared, the next promised one. Now you multiply that times 3, and what's that give you? Oh, 1844. 1844 AD. So what is that? That's like 614 and 2/3. Let's do the math in my head real quick. 614 and 2/3 times 3 takes you to, let's see, it's 645 minus 2. No, let's just do it the old-fashioned way. 614 plus 614 plus 614. We're not going to make this difficult for me. So we put a 2 there, a 4 there, and an 18. You get 1842. And then you have 2 years left over and 2/3. Well, 2/3 times 3 equals 2, right? 2/3 times 3 equals 2. So you add 2 and you get 1844. So basically, we're not pulling these numbers out of a hat. This isn't just coming from anywhere. This is historical record that in 677 BC, the idol, the abomination, was put in the holy place. Abomination put in holy place. This is what Jesus said to look at, talking about his return. Now, you add 1335 years to that, and what do you get? Well, let's figure it out. 677, 1335. Because it's BC, we're going to have to do some subtraction here. So, let's see, that's 12, 15, 8, 5, and 6. How about that? Check your work. Okay, and then you add 1, and you get 659 AD. Well, let's do 1290 instead. Well, good. I made a mistake. That means we could solve this together and figure out what's going on. 1290 minus 677 BC. And what do we get? 613. Okay. So you can see, as you can see, my memory is not flawless. Praise God, I have imperfections. But together we are figuring this out. So you got to add 1 to make it an AD date. And you have 614 AD. Now, this is the year that Muhammad began his public ministry. If you look it up online, it'll confirm that. And this is the year that The abomination makes desolate was put in the temple. So this is Jesus' prophecy. This is what he said. This is when he's going to return. It's very simple. And you add this, you multiply this times 3, and you have 1844. But here's the other one. Oh, by the way, the reason with this +1 is because there's no year 0. No year 0 on our calendar. So it throws a monkey wrench into the calculations, but it's solvable. You just got to work on it. We use the Gregorian calendar with the Christian era or the AD BC system, and on that calendar there's no 0 year, so you have to do like this extra little stuff when you're doing calculations with it using okay, anyways. So let's put this graphically. Let's put a little idol down, like put in the temple. So we have the holy place, the temple of God, and the Jews, you know, they had the temple of Solomon, and then they put this awful little, well, there we go, put this awful thing in it that wasn't supposed to be there. And from this place you go forward 1290 years, and you have Islam began. Muhammad began his public ministry. Oh, this is holy. All right. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah, but this is just like, this is like the simplest, most reduced form of it. Because this is all about Leviticus 26. This is holy, man. I'm telling you, this is holy. It's like 7 times 180 plus 30 plus, so you have 7 times half a time, or 180, plus the first month. And if you watch my other videos, hopefully you'll get more out of this. I'll explain it in more detail. But also there's, from the same starting point, 677 BC, you have plus 7 times 100, which is, you go forward 700 years, and that takes you to when Jesus died on the cross, according to the Bible. According to the exact text of the Bible, it will give the year when Jesus literally died on the cross, plus 700 years, or 7 times 100. Then you have 7 times, right. We can go into the rest of it later, but it's the most miraculous prophecy. I love the Leviticus 26 prophecy. But there's so much more to this, because that's just part of it. Let's graphically put this down with when Israel was destroyed. So, Israel, the kingdom of Israel. This has never been destroyed before. This has never been done before. This is the most major event in history, in religious history in the Jewish world. So, how can you represent the kingdom of Israel? I'm not sure. Israel. As opposed, this is separate from Judah. So I'm just going to write down Israel and put a house. Well, this is a major house, man. This is the kingdom of Israel. I mean, this thing had like walls and defensive stuff going on, you know, like huge place, and it was destroyed. So we're gonna put a big sword here. Woof. You know, no offense, my fellow Jews, I love you guys, but we know that this place was destroyed in 721 BC. This is historical record, hard fact. There are many books that publish this fact. Now you go forth 2 days, and you get to Jesus' birth. So let's make a little cradle, and you know, his holy head is going to have light shining from it. In our little depiction here, I'm not going to write his beautiful face down, and I'm going to put down Jesus. Oh, excuse me. We're going to put down Jesus. Praise be to God. I don't mean to talk like a preacher. So we got the person in the manger, and we go forth from this point. We're going to go forth 2 days, which is 2 times 360. This is all like biblical days. According to the Bible, according to the Old Testament, a day is composed of 12 months. A month is 30 days. It's just 360. This is standard prophecy. And you get to, oh, by the way, also a day is a year. Hopefully we can look at that together. A yom, 30 yoms. The Hebrew day, which is a year, 30. So it's 720 years. 20 years. Forward, and you get to 1 BC, 1 AD, more 1 BC, but right around that point before Christ in the year of our Lord when Jesus was born. Now all this here is what you get to going forward 2 days. Now if you go forward 1290 instead, well, you get to Islam. Another blessed, wonderful baby was born. Oh, sacred event. And this one's name is Muhammad. So we're going to write down that sacred symbol, the star and the moon. And this one we're going to go forward 1290. So 1290. This is the place that Jesus said. Look at what Daniel said about the abomination makes desolate, set in the holy place for 1290 years. Again, abomination makes desolate, being Israel destroyed. Israel worshipped idols, so they were an abomination. God destroyed them. And then 1290 years later, God destroyed the kingdom of Israel. And you get to Muhammad's birth. All right, so the same thing. You go for 1335 years later, and you go to not Muhammad's birth, but Islam began. And Muhammad started proclaiming Islam publicly. So, hello world. We go forward. The other sacred number in Daniel is right next to 1290 is 1335 years, where it says, blessed is he who comes to 1335. Well, Muhammad's lineage was blessed, according to the book of Genesis, when Ishmael was blessed to have many, many followers. The exact blessing was something like that. He's going to have many, many followers, like the stars in the sky, too numerous to count. So the same blessing separately was given to Ishmael. So I'm going to write that down. Many descendants, basically many believers, descendants, spiritual descendants. Anyone who believes in Jesus is a descendant of Jesus. Anyone who believes in Muhammad is a descendant of Muhammad. Many descendants. And my name means descender. Believe! How can anybody not believe after seeing this beautiful stuff? It's time to descend. Be a descendant of God's holy grace. Be a descendant of Jesus and Muhammad. It's time to believe. Look, it all adds up. It's undeniable. Okay. So this miraculous, amazing thing is real. This is the 1290 prophecy. It's just half of it. Because the other half, is basically, this is 1290 years. Takes you to when Muhammad began his public ministry. You go forward another 1290 years, and you get to when Baha'u'llah began his public ministry. But this is 1290 lunar years by the Islamic calendar, because everything holy in the world of Islam is recorded by their Islamic calendar. This isn't a mundane event. This is a holy event. So we're going to use the lunar years, Islamic calendar. Now, this isn't a foreign concept. The Jews used lunar years initially. So there's the 1290 prophecy. And it's not even like all of it. It's not even all of it. So, here's some old notes of mine. I hope this will be of value to somebody. But we haven't even gone over like Revelations 9:13, where it says that the same year, at the end of the 3-year period, they're going to slay the third part of men. And this actually was fulfilled when 20,000 of the Bab's followers were slain or martyred. Okay, so what do we have here? Now, Muhammad began his private ministry in the year 611 AD to 610 AD, somewhere around there. And you multiply that times 3, Jesus' 3-day prophecy, and you get 1833. So this is all approximate. We're not going to be exact with here. This is not exact. And you add that to the year when Jesus was crucified on the cross, 34 AD. And what do you have? 1867 AD. There you go. So the year when Muhammad began his private ministry, you multiply that times 3, because there's 3 loaves of bread, 3 aegis, and that takes you to 1833 AD. You add 34 AD and you get 1867 AD. This is simplistic. I'm not being, I'm not getting rid of the 0 year and all that, but this is one way of representing it. In reality, it's really like 610 AD to 611 AD, and we're not exactly sure about the month, and you got to subtract the 0 year and then multiply times 3 and then add 1 and then add 34 AD, and you still get, the more exact you are with your calculations, the more exact your answer will be. You're going to get the exact month when Baha'u'llah began his public ministry. Started writing letters to the kings and rulers of the world, telling them to get rid of slavery and that there's a new promised one and things like that. So it's useful to check out Baha'u'llah's proclamation that he gave to the world. Basically, let's see if we can find that. Huh. That's strange, because Baha'u'llah gave a proclamation, a public, when he began his public ministry, and it's not anywhere that's easily found. So it's not this book, whatever this book is, it's not that book either. I'm talking about like the quote that represents, when he told the world that he's the promised one. I'll charge you with finding that for yourself. That's important to read. And the gate, or the Bab, he gave a proclamation as well. Let's see if that's easily found. (1844) May 23rd. That's when he began his public ministry. Yeah, I don't see his proclamation either. Basically, it's something like I am, and then you can. I charge you with researching that for yourself as well. That will be very enriching to see. If you want to know more about the Bab, read the Dawnbreakers. If you want to know more about Baha'u'llah, read the Book of Certitude. Read the Hidden Words and the 7 Valleys and 4 Valleys of Baha'u'llah. Let's see. So at this point, now that we have done a brief overview, it may be helpful to do one more calculation, and then we'll hopefully go into more detail. All right, so What else is there? Okay, so according to the prophecies that we just covered, Muhammad began his ministry 614 AD or 615 AD. Now, you multiply when he began his public ministry times 3. Remember that this is about his private ministry. When he began his private ministry, basically what happened is he went into a cave. The angel Gabriel came to him and he revealed unto him the revelation of God, the word of God, but he wasn't supposed to tell anybody like publicly. So he just told his wife and her friend. He told a few people. So it was kept private initially, and then about 3 years later, it was publicly revealed to the world and proclaimed to the world. The revelation of God, which became the Quran, or was written down as the Quran. So you have this, you multiply it times 3, and what you get is, well, let's see, 615 times 3 is 1845, and 614 times 3 is 1842. So basically 1844 is there. It's in there. And this is just like the most simplistic way of putting it. We're talking about the 3 loaves of bread. And that's Jesus' 3-day prophecy. This is he put it different ways. Jesus gave the prophecy different ways. So this is a simplistic way. This is the way given in Matthew 13:33, when Jesus said, you have these 3 loaves of bread, and that's what the kingdom of God is like. So now we're just going to go into the detail a little more. Going to explore this together as time permits, because I'm still waiting on a load. Okay, so let's look at the detail. Oh, already have it open. Here we go. Okay, we'll just use whatever shows up. NIV should work. We're turning to Matthew 24. We'll start with Matthew 23, like right at the end of it. Okay. Matthew 23. Talking about Jerusalem. Look, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So when are they going to see Jesus again? He's going to die. He's going to be crucified. And eventually they're going to see him again when he returns. That's the theme here. That's the topic. Okay, then they're at the temple, and Jesus tells them, this temple is going to be destroyed. I'm paraphrasing here. Everything's paraphrased that I'm talking about. So next thing you know it, the disciples ask, when will all this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? All what happened? They're talking about Jesus' return. They're talking about the destruction of the temple. Why are they going from there, the destruction of the temple, to when will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? How are they related? And the answer is Jesus' 3-day prophecy. If you will recall, Jesus said to a sinful generation, I'm only going to give you one sign, that I'm the promised one. Basically, this is all paraphrase. That one sign that I'm the promised one is destroy this temple. In 3 days it'll be rebuilt. I'm going to give you the sign of Jonah, as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a whale. so shall the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth. So Jesus' body was dead for 3 days. And this is all symbolic, because after the 3 days he returns. So in Hebrew, what's the word for day? Because Jesus was speaking to Hebrews. Jesus was speaking to people who understood the language of their religion. The word for day that we have for day in Hebrew is yom. In Greek, it's eon. So we're going to look for a Strong's definition, because we're looking for a scholarly source here. We're not just looking willy-nilly anywhere. We want something that is reputable. We're scientifically investigating this together. So the word yom's root meaning is to be hot as the warm hours of a day. Let's see if I can find Strong's anywhere. How unfortunate, it doesn't seem to be there. Okay, so we'll go see what we can pull up next. Maybe Wikipedia. Oh, God, guide me. I'm running into a lot of trouble here. Maybe this will do. Yom, the Hebrew word yom, day. So Jesus was talking to Hebrews when he talked to his disciples. When he was telling all these Hebrews, in 3 days I'll return, they knew that day, the word day that he talked about, meant a lot more than just 24 hours. Because the Hebrew word for day, yom, means other things. It means time. Let's see if I can get lucky and get an actual definition. A division of time. A month. A period of time. The reign of a king. An appointed time, such as the end of days. It's also translated to a year. But basically, a given period of time, such as the reign of a king, when the king began his reign, when he ends his reign, that's a time. That's the time of King whatever. King Bob. He had a time. So, the most important times given in the Bible are the times that Jesus talks about when he's talking about when he's going to return. And basically, the numbers that you'll see, we're going to look at together, are 1290 and 1335. Those numbers are related to when he will return, as well as the number times 3. So the whole point of this, the main point of this, is to see that the Hebrew word day, it translates to period, you see, of that period. It translates to time or times or days. It also translates to year. So this is like visual proof. We're not just giving a lecture here. We're showing you hard proof. So Jesus' 3-day prophecy meant that basically after his body's crucified on the cross in 34 AD, 3 periods of time later, then he'll return. Now, it's not talking about 3 literal days necessarily. It's not limited to that necessarily. Because 3 literal days is 72 hours later, and we know that if you look at the text of the Bible, Jesus wasn't seen 72 hours later. He was seen in half that time. So according to Jesus' prophecy, if you take it literally, as 3 exact days later, he failed to produce the one sign that he was that he gave that he's the promised one. The temple was not rebuilt literally 3 days later. It was not rebuilt 72 hours later. He appeared in half that time, according to the text. The boulder was removed from the mouth of the cave in half that time. It's like 1.5 days later. So, whether he fulfilled the prophecy 3 literal days later or not, I'll leave that up to you to figure out. But I know for certain he fulfilled it metaphorically, using time prophecy. And Jesus said himself that this prophecy that he gave regarding 3 days was about the sign of the times. The sign of the times. Matthew 16:3. What's it say? Let's see if we can read it. Today will be stormy, for the sky is red. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the sign of the times. What did he say next? He gave the 3-day prophecy next. So basically the sign of the times is a 3-day prophecy. He says after that, the sign of the times, a wicked and adulterous generation looks for a sign, but none will be given it except the sign of Jonah. And we know that the sign of Jonah was Jesus was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale. So this is related to Jesus being, like, after he dies, 3 days later he's going to return. So, and we're not talking about 3 literal days necessarily, 3 periods of time, 3 ages. A day is an age. It's a reign of a king. And in particular, we're talking about the reign of Jesus Christ before he returns as Muhammad. So let's look at this. Matthew 24 with Bible Hub. See what it says. I'm about to show you proof that what I'm talking about is legit. It's totally, like, provable. So let's see what the disciples ask about when will these things be. I'm going to click that. Verse 3. And we're going to look at word by word according to the Greek, what we're talking about here. Basically, they ask, when will the end of the age be? The Greek word is anos. And it comes from the same as properly an age, the end of an age. So it says, especially a messianic period. It's the age of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Like, Christ means Messiah. It's the age of Jesus Christ the Messiah, before Muhammad came. Because when Muhammad came, a new age began. So let's look at the 3 loaves of bread prophecy, 1333. All right. The kingdom of heaven is likened to leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal, till the whole was leaven. You see, he wasn't talking about 3 literal days. Why would he call it 3 loaves of bread? So leaven is a substance like yeast. It makes dough rise. And if you recall, Jesus said, beware the leaven of the Pharisees. Beware the teachings of the Pharisees. And he's referring to the yeasty bread, the old stale bread that's all leavened and gross, and it has like colors on it and things growing on it. It's because it's old. It's outdated. And the covenant of Moses originally was pure and uncorrupted. And as time went on, and Moses' influence was further and further away, the teachings became corrupted. And the Sadducees added their stuff to it. In the clergy class, they wanted control, and they wanted money, and they wanted to look righteous, and it just became more and more corrupted. And in the clergy class, they tried to challenge Jesus in the new covenant with some of the corrupted ideas of the old covenant and their traditions and superstitions, and show that Jesus didn't meet the standard of what they thought was righteous. So Jesus said, beware the leaven of the Pharisees. He's talking about beware their stale bread, their corrupted teachings. And so the religion of God is like a piece of bread. And when it's new, like when Moses began his ministry, it was a great new piece of bread. And then at the end of it, end of Moses' epoch, it got all stale and corrupted. And then Jesus came. He said, I am the bread. And whoever eats from his bread is going to live forever. And he's talking about his teachings and belief in him as the new promised one. So that was the uncorrupted new religion, the new bread. This is how the advent of Jesus Christ represented a loaf of bread. And then, after a certain period in time, it's well recorded in history what happened in Christianity and how the clergy class became corrupted and were making money, selling statues, and things were introduced that were not pure. Things were introduced like the concept of the Trinity that were not originally a part of the Christian teachings. So, what happened? Well, in 614, 615 AD, Muhammad appeared and proclaimed the oneness of God anew. So there you have another loaf of bread, except let's look at Isaiah 61. Except the thing is, it's not really 3 loaves of bread. We'll look at Isaiah 61 together, hopefully, if it allows me to. Okay, so he's going to proclaim the good news to the poor. What good news is this? He's going to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Well, we know what year that is. That's when the promised one's going to come. The day of God. It's going to be the day of God to the believers who accept him, and the day of vengeance to the heathens who fight him and reject him. At the same time, we got this dual thing going on. This is the day of God that Isaiah is predicting will come. And what does Isaiah predict about it? Well, you know what the word garment means? It means clothes. And the king wears the clothes of the kingdom. Okay, the biblical symbol for clothes or mantle, it means the kingdom, the dominion that the king rules over. So the garment of praise here is talking about the kingdom of praise. The name Muhammad literally means praise. So Isaiah talks about the kingdom or the empire or the world of Islam that's going to rule nations. And this is what the Lord's going to give the people. Isaiah 61 also talks about the kingdom of salvation or the kingdom of Jesus Christ. Because the name Jesus literally is related to the word salvation or helper, Shua. So this is all in the same chapter, the same little chapter in Isaiah. It has the kingdom of praise, the kingdom of Muhammad, and the kingdom of Jesus. Now, what's it say about the kingdom of Muhammad in particular? The kingdom of praise, what's it say in particular? Oh, he's going to perform these certain things, and he did. Muhammad did perform all this stuff that it says he's going to do. It says he's going to be Gentiles. It says he's going to be foreigners. And Muhammad isn't descended from Israel. He's descended from Ishmael. So yes, he's a Gentile according to the Israelites. So all this stuff came true. But it also says that this kingdom of Muhammad, the kingdom of praise, is going to receive a double portion. It's going to inherit a double portion. So, okay, the first portion is the epoch of Jesus Christ, beginning of the calendar to 615 AD. You multiply that times 3, and you get 1844. So the first portion is up to 615 AD, that area. The next portion is 615 times 3. No, it's 615 times 2. That's your double portion. So you have the length of the epoch of Jesus Christ times 2. That's your double portion. That's how long Islam lasted before the next promised one came with the name of the gate, the Bab, in 1844 AD. And so this gives a lot more details about the kingdom of Islam. It even talks about the garments of salvation here, basically the kingdom of Jesus Christ. And basically what Jesus Christ is going to do is he's going to cause, let's see what it says. He's going to cause Muhammad to spring up before all the nations. And we're going to see that because basically the one prophecy that Jesus gave the world was telling everybody, hey, this is when Muhammad's going to come. That's what Jesus did. That's when he died on the cross, that put an end to sin. Because sin is not recognizing the true promised one of the age in which we live. And to be outside of sin, to accept the promised one, is to be free from sin. So when Jesus died in 34 AD, as I'll show you soon, hopefully, in the Jesus prophecy, the Jesus 3-day prophecy, he gave the date for when Islam would begin, when the Bab's religion began, and when Baha'u'llah's religion began, all at the same time. He gave the date for when Islam began twice. And if he died in any other year, in 34 AD, he wouldn't have been able to do that. That wouldn't have happened. So we're going to look at that mathematical formula together as well, I hope, if we have time. That's a lot. That's a whole lot I just went over. Let's just go back to simplifying things a little bit. 3 loaves of bread. You see? 1, 2, 3. Jesus said he would return 3 days later. 1, 2, 3. The first loaf is Christianity. The epoch before 615 AD. The next loaf of bread is the same length as 2 ages of Christianity together, added together. So that's the next loaf of bread, times 2. 1290 years. Well, let's look at the value 1290 years on the Islamic calendar. That's 1252 to 1253 years on the solar calendar. So now, when you're calculating it, the long method, you're going to have to go like after Jesus was crucified in 34 AD. But what you ultimately get to is 3 separate segments, and 1290 being the second one. But we'll get to the longer method of calculating this. Right now we're talking about the simpler method of calculating this. So, yes, the 1290 period represents the abomination makes desolate. That's the red dragon. That's the corrupt version of Islam that took over the religion of Islam. The 666, Muawiyah, and Islam as ruled like a kingship, dynasties, like a Eastern or like a European kingship with sons becoming the next king. That was all started by Muawiyah, and that lasted 1290 years until the Ottoman Empire was destroyed in World War II. And that's part of the Jesus 3-day prophecy as well. It gives the years for when Muawiyah and his father Abu Sufyan, when they entered Islam surreptitiously with the intent of corrupting it from within. And this is all confirmed in Bible prophecy. In particular, I'm talking about Habakkuk 3 and Psalms 68. It is truly amazing. So, let's go back to where we were. Let's look at Matthew a little bit more. So we're looking for, like, what does Jesus say exactly about when he's going to return? What signs does he give? When will these things be? What will be the end of the age? Watch out that no one deceives you. See, I'm using proofs here. I'm using scientific proofs, mathematical proofs. This isn't a deception. This is all, like, verifiable and real, as I'm showing you. So you're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. He goes about things like that, but he says ultimately that basically this isn't when he's going to come. See, it says, but the end is still to come. All these are but the beginning of birth pains. All right. So wars have been happening throughout history. So, which one means he's going to return? That's not the answer. So let's look for something that is the answer of when he's going to return. Like, yeah, these things happened in history. Christians were persecuted, and false prophets appeared throughout history. We're looking for concrete stuff. Okay, this is what it says. The gospel is going to be preached to the whole world in every nation, and then the end will come. After it's preached to the whole world. Well, America wasn't discovered till 14-something. Was it 1492? It wasn't discovered by the white people who had the gospel. So the gospel wasn't preached to all of the world till at least after 1492, right? So that gives us a clue of when the time of the end is going to be. It's going to be sometime after 1492. That's what I'm looking for. Hard, concrete, science-based stuff. Now this is the big red clue here. So when you see standing in the holy place, the abomination that causes desolation spoken of through Daniel the prophet, let the reader understand. That's when he's going to return. So where does Daniel the prophet speak about the abomination makes desolate? Well, that's Daniel 12. All the way at the end. Here it is. From the time that daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1290 days. Blessed is he who waits for and reaches the end of the 1335 days. As for you, go your way till the end. See, we're talking about the time of the end of days. We're talking about when Jesus will return. So, two things are going to happen initially. The daily sacrifice is going to be abolished. That means the previous covenant is going to come to an end, and a new promised one's going to appear. That's what that phrase means, and I'm going to prove that to you. Okay, the second thing is the abomination that causes desolation is going to be set up for 1290 years. So when the daily sacrifice is abolished, the abomination that causes desolation is going to be set up at that same time. It's going to last 1290 years. Remember, the Hebrew word yom means year. So, we've basically showed you how that all came to pass. And then it says, blessed is the one who waits and reaches for the end of the 1335 years. So, let's see if I can show you again, graphically. I know it's probably not necessary, but let's just check it out. Real quick. 1290 and 1335. Well, here we are. 2 days, 1290 is when Jesus will appear. So when Muhammad was born, and 1335, ministry began, ministry of Muhammad. In 2 days, basically the word days in plural, is when Jesus was born. So let's go back then. That's what that's talking about. Let's talk about when Islam will begin, and when Muhammad will be born. A similar prophecy points to when Jesus was born as well. The foundation point being the abomination of Israel, because Israel worshipped idols, and it desolated the people who lived in the kingdom of Israel. It was a desolation to them, and his kingdom was desolated in 721 BC. So in that sense, yes, it's talking about Israel just being destroyed, and the birth of Muhammad and the beginning of the ministry of Muhammad. And as Jesus said, that's when he's going to return. So in this sense, it may be talking about the daily sacrifice of, the idols to the idols and the false gods in the kingdom of Israel. And when that was abolished, when Israel was destroyed. And this that I'm telling you about is talked about in prophecy. Read Hosea, Joel, and Amos. In particular, Hosea and Amos. It literally talks about how awful Israel was and how they were worshiping idols and how it needed to be destroyed. And it gave the prophecy right then and there that, Israel's going to be destroyed. And it gives a timepiece basically showing the prophetic symbolism, sifting the Israelites. It's the great sifter, a measurement of time, a measurement device. And it shows days, and then it says new wine. The new wine will come down from the mountains. So this is telling you when the new wine of Muhammad will appear, as well as days, being plural, the new wine of Jesus being born. And in particular, it points you to when their calendars will begin, the day of the calendar of Christianity beginning at the beginning of the Christian calendar that we use today. And Islam didn't begin when Muhammad was born. It began a little later, the calendar anyways. But on the Islamic calendar, you have the year 1260, and that's when Baha'u'llah began his public ministry. 1260 being a month later than 1290. As you can see, 1290 days. But let's verify the idea that daily sacrifice is abolished. That is the beginning of a new promised one. So we're going to look at Joel 1. Okay. Wail, all you drinkers of wine, wail because of the new wine, for it has been snatched from your lips. You see, the old covenant has come to an end. The new wine has gone stale. It's talking about, the branches have gone white. That's like leprosy. It's disease. The old covenant is diseased and stale, and it's lost its savor. It's like all these diseases, locusts eating the food. It's describing the old covenant coming to an end. And it says the grain offering and drink offerings are cut off from the house of the Lord. Well, that's the daily sacrifice being abolished. It's ceasing. It says the grain is destroyed, the new wine is dried up. So how can you have the daily sacrifice? The old covenant came to an end. The bread is stale. Grieve for the wheat and the barley, because the harvest of the field is destroyed. That's another way of putting it. The fig tree is withered. These are all metaphor. This is actually describing fig trees. Even at one place it talks about a barn is going to be all rotted up. What's a barn have to do with fig trees being destroyed? Nothing. This is all metaphor. It says the grain offering and drink offerings are withheld from the house of your God. That's the temple, the holy place. See, this is saying the daily sacrifice is going to cease. The daily sacrifice is going to come to an end. That's the old covenant coming to an end. In particular, in this instance, it's the Mosaic dispensation. The epoch, the advent of Moses is going to come to an end. You see, it's not actually talking about this grain offering. It says, it's basically crying aloud in the house of the Lord. Alas for that day, for the day of the Lord is near. It's talking about the day of God when the promised one will come. Yeah, it's the day of God, but it's the day of destruction from the Almighty to the sinners who reject the promised one. And this isn't talking about food necessarily. Yeah, the food's cut off, but it's talking about joy and gladness from the house of our God. The symbol of the covenant. It's talking about the epoch of the dispensation coming to an end. That's what this is explaining here. And so this is a prophecy in the book of Joel, and what it ultimately gives is it gives the who, what, when, why, and where of Jesus Christ, when he's going to appear. Joel gave this prophecy hundreds of years before Jesus. It's going to give you the who, what, when, why, or where about Jesus. So this is all explained more. I go into it in my other videos, but you know, in the time of Jesus, you had these Roman soldiers who marched in line, and it's describing all the details of the Roman ranks and how powerful they are. And it even says that their soldiers are going to appear like horses with their crests on the top of their helmets, like a horse mane. So it talks about this is the day of the Lord. It's great. It's dreadful. Who can endure it? This is the great and dreadful day of the Lord. So it's the day when the promised one appears. And, okay. Let's just look real quickly. It gives a lot of details. A lot of details. So basically, Jesus said, I am the bread. It says, I'm sending you grain, new wine, and olive oil. So you get the new wine and new oil, the new bread. It's going to satisfy you fully because the old covenant came to an end. It's a new covenant. See, the vats will overflow with new wine and oil. Jesus is the new wine. Everything's going to be restored, and there's going to be a new covenant. And you'll praise the name of your Lord. You see, beware, look out. Whenever it says name of your Lord, he's about to get the name of the promised one. You will praise the name of the Lord your God, who has worked wonders for you. Wonders mean miracles. It's related. The Hebrew word for wonders is related to miracles being done. It's going to astonish you. It's going to desolate. But this also translates to astonish and dumbfound and dumbstruck. It's like, wow, they're stunned at these amazing miracles. That's what Jesus did. So, let's see if we can find more. The sun and moon did turn to darkness when Jesus was martyred and on the day of the Lord. So it says, and everyone who calls in the name of the Lord will be saved. And that word saved is related to the name Jesus. Basically, it says name of the Lord and saved, all in one sentence. It's giving you the name of Jesus, the promised one. He's going to come in Jerusalem. You see? That's where he was crucified. It gives you where, who, what, when, why, and where. There will be deliverance or salvation. It's translated as salvation in other texts. It's giving his name again. So this is all about, basically what this shows, what this proves in Joel 1 through 2 is that the daily sacrifice coming to an end is all about the end of an age and the coming of a new age, the coming of a new promised one. That's why we went there. So we could show that in Daniel 12, when it talks about the daily sacrifice is going to cease, it's going to be abolished, and at the same time, the abomination that causes desolation will be set up. So it's the end of one age, it's the beginning of a new age, the coming of the new promised one. In this instance, it was Muhammad. And that was 1290 days after the idol was put in the temple by King Manasseh in 677 BC. And then it says, blessed is the one who waits, etc., etc., 1335 days. So if you go 1335 years from 677 BC, when King Manasseh put the idol in the temple, you get when King Muhammad began his public ministry. The praised one. Muhammad was like the king of the kingdom of Islam. He's the uplifted. The word praised means uplifted, raised up, exalted, high. Like your Royal Highness is like the sovereign king in the kingdom of Islam. He was the high one. He was the prophet of God. Praise be to Muhammad. He's up high. He's uplifted. He's the glorious prophet of the one true God. He's not God. He's the prophet of the one true God. So that's what this is showing. Let's take a break there. That's just profound. That's so profound. All of this is sacred. All of this is holy. Holy, holy, holy. It's set apart. This is the time of the harvest. This is sacred and profound. Praise the mighty God who gave this miraculous prophet so that we can all have salvation, and that we can all be freed from the sin of rejecting the promised one. Now I see that the landscapers are starting to work around my big rig, and you may get some noise, but that's just that's just background stuff going on. So here's another, I might as well show you this real quick if it helps anybody. Just in case it might help somebody. Oops. I'm not trying to show you my work. Okay, let's back up here. Alright, so the lighting here is horrible. Open up this curtain here. See if that helps at all. Not much. Alright, that's the best I can do. These are earlier notes that I had. This is all taken from the text. It's one time in history, the X and the Y. It's like solving algebra, when all these things would take place. The year of God's favor, the kingdom of praise, foreigners will rule it, they'll conquer nations, they'll have a double portion. The Lord has blessed them, like the blessing that Abraham gave to Muhammad's ancestor Ishmael. And you have the garment of salvation, which is for the Christians. That's okay. Well, both of them are talking about the new wine. Muhammad's name means praised or raised up. And there's a prophecy about the flood, Matthew 24. That happened in 1844 in America. And in the midst of the people, the blessings in the midst of the people, giving Isaiah 61. Well, that's related to Genesis also, where it has a blessing about Ishmael, or a prophecy about him in the midst of the people. So let's see what else we have. Right. Yeah, this is important. This lack of lighting is very unfortunate. But I hope that you can see all this anyways. Right, so this is the more accurate Jesus 3-day prophecy. It's basically 34 AD when Jesus was crucified, plus 3 days later, or 3x equals y, the year when Jesus will return. And we convert it to 33 years from the beginning of the calendar because we want to compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges. We want to have like units. And AD, since the calendar begins at the year 0, cannot be multiplied times 3, an AD value. So we change it to 33 years from the beginning of the calendar when Jesus was crucified. Jesus was 33 years old when he was crucified. Then you add 3x, and gives you the year of his return. That's the Jesus 3-day prophecy put in algebraic form. The other prophecy Jesus gave was in Daniel 9, or Daniel 13 at the end. No, Daniel 12 at the end. And that's where the daily sacrifice came to cease. It came to an end. And so basically at the end of Daniel it says the daily sacrifice is going to stop. Which means the previous age is going to end and a new age will begin. And a new promised one will appear. And so we looked at that together just a little while ago. And that can be symbolized by X. Because this is what Jesus was talking about. And it had something to do with his return. So we know that this is after or during the age of Jesus Christ. It's going to be the age, the Messianic age. Remember the Greek word for age that was used, that we looked up? That's what X is talking about. Then you add 1290 years, according to Daniel, and that gives us the year of Jesus' return, according to Matthew 24. So that's your second formula. And you can solve this by plugging them into each other simple algebra. And you get 1257 divided by 2, which gives you 628 and a half. See, this is the more complex and accurate way of solving when Jesus will return. We're being very exact. So there's your x, 628 and a half. You solve for y and you get y equals 628 and a half plus 1290 years. And you get y equals 1918 and a half. Then you convert these solution answers you have, you convert that to the AD-BC system on our calendar by adding a year. And you get 1919 AD and 629 AD. And basically what that is that's when 629 AD, when Mecca, around when Mecca was conquered, like physically. And when Muawiyah joined Islam to undermine it. He's like the Antichrist of Islam. He turned it into dynasties, like the Western kings, like their kingships. And Islam had 10 great dynasties, the 10 great horns on the red dragon. Well, this ended in 1919 AD. That's the actual day, year for when World War II ended and the Ottoman Empire was conquered. And the dynasty, the Islamic dynasties came to an end. The great Islamic dynasties of history, all 10 of them. It ended with the Ottoman Empire being conquered in 1919 AD. Okay, now solve using... Okay, so now that we've reached these two answers, we have the actual duration of the abomination makes desolate, the red dragon. This is all 1290 years here, from 629 to 1919 AD. Well, this is not what we're looking for. We're looking for when Jesus Christ will return, when the promised one will appear, and the promised one at the end of the first age, and the promised one after the 3 ages. So, when Jesus will return, Jesus Christ will return. So, in order to get those answers, I want you to solve this for yourself. You can use an online calculator if you want, or you can just do it with the calculator if you know the algebra, or get someone to help you who knows high school algebra, or algebra 2. So you're going to solve this for yourself using, instead of 34 AD, use 70 AD. Solve it for when Jesus was crucified and when the actual temple was destroyed in 70 AD. These are well-known dates. And 34 AD isn't just a well-known date, it's biblical. And it's based on our calendar that we all use. Jesus said in Luke 3:23, let's see, that Luke said that Jesus was 30 years old when he began his ministry. John records 3 events where Jesus went to Jerusalem to celebrate annual Passover, and he mentions another event when he went to Jerusalem to celebrate a holy day. So it's 3 or 4 years long that his ministry lasted. So we have 34 AD. So now I want you to solve this for 1290 years and 1290 lunar years. So 1290 lunar years, which is what the Hebrew calendar was originally composed of. This isn't foreign. This is sacred. In Hebrew, lunar years are sacred to the Jews and to the Muslims. So 1290 solar years is 1252 to 1253. 1290 lunar years is 1252 to 1253 solar years. So 1290 years, according to the Islamic calendar, according to the original Jewish calendar, 1290 lunar years is the same as 1252 years on our calendar to 1253 years. And it varies. It's not an exact answer. It varies depending on the exact epoch, because, you know, the length of time that it takes for the moon to revolve around the earth, or the length of a month, is not a constant. It varies. They're grand cycles, so it just depends on what epoch you're measuring from. It could be 1252 years, it could be 1253 years. Well, calculate it for all those, and you're going to get about 8 different responses, 8 different results, including 1844, the year of the Bab, 611, the year when Muhammad began his private ministry, and 610. These are both well-known years that are believed, you know, they're not sure exactly when, but it was around there, 610 or 611. So you're going to get those 2 years as a response. You're also going to get 1863 AD as a result. And as you saw, you got the year of the actual the epoch of the abomination makes desolate, the epoch of the Red Dragon, which ended in World War II when Ottoman Empire was destroyed. We're talking about the dragon, the abomination makes desolate in Islam, which was, these dynasties of usurpers who were not the true heads of Islam. The 12 Imams were the true heads of Islam, but we'll get to that in the other prophecies, hopefully later. Every religion has their version of an abomination makes desolate, as you can see. Israel, the kingdom of Israel, was an abomination. They worshipped idols. Judah, the kingdom of the Jews, the original kingdom of the Jews, the kingdom of Judah, it worshipped idols at times too. In fact, King Manasseh, the king of the Jews, at one time, he put an idol in the holy place, in the temple. It was such a terrible event, and it's well recorded when that happened, historically. They had their version of the abomination makes desolate. Christianity has their version of the abomination that makes desolate, well known. And Islam too has their version of the abomination makes desolate, the usurpers who usurped the religion of God from the 12 Imams and Ali. So those are the true successors of Muhammad. Let's see. Every religion has their version of the abomination that makes desolate. Baha'u'llah named Azal the most great idol. So let's look at some of the proofs that I have here. No. We'll look online. I already have all this. (677) is when Manasseh, king of Judah, was taken into temporary captivity by the soldiers. Now there is archaeological evidence where it's written in stone that this event happened, and it's related to like 678 BC. So, this is well known in Jewish tradition that this event took place, and it's repeated in many different scholarly sources that 677 BC is when King Manasseh put this idol in the temple. And this includes a version of Smith's Bible Dictionary. This includes the Masonic Bible. This includes the Standard Index Reference Bible. This is a literal printed Bible that's been around for decades. And it's known in Jewish tradition that this is the year when King Manasseh did this. And why this matters is you go to Leviticus 26. The three commandment themes are: don't make idols. These sacred stone. There's no stone idols that you don't want to use those in worship of the one true God. You don't make idols. You don't worship the idols. Don't bow down to them. The other commandment is observe the Sabbath. In other words, observe the seventh day, which is 20 years later. Observe the Sabbath day. And the other one is have reverence for the sanctuary. You want to have reverence for the holy place. Reverence it. Treat it as holy, as set apart. Don't put an abomination in it. So all these commandment themes were broken, the two of them, when Manasseh put an abomination in the holy place. He put an idol, a statue, standing up, apparently, in the holy place. So that started the show in 677 BC. What happened as a result of that? Well, it tells you. If you obey these three commandments, God's going to give you all these wonderful blessings. Rain, crops and all that stuff, peace. But if you disobey it, you're going to be punished. And it lists 7 punishments. Let's see what it says. Sudden terror, wasting diseases, destroy your sight, sap your strength. Enemies will eat your seed, set his face against you, defeated by your enemies. They'll hate you. You'll flee. So there's your 7 punishments. If after all this you will not listen to me, I will punish you for your sins 7 times over, or 7 more times. So this is all about being punished 7 times for your sins if you don't obey these blessings. And recall that one of the punishments was that Israel will destroy you, or Israel will be destroyed. They'll be conquered by their enemies. So see, it says you will be defeated by your enemies. See all these severe blessings and afflictions. I will bring the sword on you to avenge the breaking of the covenant. It says, you will be given into enemy hands. These are among the punishments that are listed. It says, I will scatter you among the nations. Bingo! That's the one I was looking for. So, when King Manasseh put the abomination in the holy place, the punishments began, according to Leviticus 26. I mean, you obey these 3 commandments, or you're going to be punished. And the commandments involved, don't worship statues, don't bow down before them, and sanctify the holy place, sanctify the temple. Hold it holy. Don't put an idol in it. So King Manasseh broke these commandments in 677 BC, and that's when he was scattered. The scattering took place. That's when the kingdom was destroyed by their enemies. And this was the punishment that God said would happen. So what happened historically in the Bible is Assyria came, invaded the kingdom of Judah, and they apparently defeated them, because what they did is they kidnapped King Manasseh, and they were exiling him with a hook through his nose in chains. They were taking him on foot to the kingdom of Babylon. So there you have it. The punishment began in 677 BC, according to the historical record. According to the scholarly sources that I just listed out, I listed out 3 of them. So that's probably when he also broke the commandments. He put an abomination in the holy place. So that's what Jesus was talking about when he was talking about when he's going to return. He said, refer to where Daniel talks about the abomination that makes desolate standing in the holy place. And Daniel says he's set in the holy place. And so this is the foundation of many of these prophecies, but it's not the only one. The other one is Jerusalem, is Israel being destroyed. In 71 BC to 721 BC. So what's it say? 721 BC, Assyria swept out of the north, captured the northern kingdom of Israel, and took the 10 tribes into captivity. So there's your other abomination. Now let's look at what Amos says about all that. Now, instead, because I believe that Amos particularly points out that Israel worshipped idols, and that's why that needed to happen. And he gives that prophecy from there. But in particular, even better than that, let's look at Hosea. Hosea 6:2. Okay. Full context. Previous chapter. Lord help me. Okay, so it says, starting with 13, Ephraim, that's another, it's used to talk about Israel, the kingdom of Israel, Ephraim being the multitude. Judah was one kingdom, the kingdom of Zion. Ephraim was more represented the kingdom of Israel. So when Ephraim saw his sickness and Judah saw his wound, then Ephraim went to Syria and sent King Jareb, yet he cannot cure you, nor heal you of your wound. For I will be like a lion to Ephraim, and like a lion to the house of Judah. I will tear them and go away. I will take them away, and no one shall rescue them. I will return again to my place till they acknowledge their offense. You see how this till thing is, it's time prophecy. So the first thing is Israel's going to be destroyed. Ephraim's going to be destroyed by a lion, the lion of Assyria. And eventually it'll be the lion of Babylon, which means baby lion, that attacks Judah. But we're talking about Ephraim here. It says, come and let us return to the Lord, for he has torn, the lion tore them. He has torn, but he will heal us. He is stricken, but he will bind us up. So this is talking about after Israel is destroyed in 721 BC. We're talking about returning. This is until this certain time. Return to the Lord. When? After 2 days, he will revive us. See? That's the 720 years later. 2 days. That's when Jesus Christ was born. 2 days, the 720 years from when Israel was destroyed, Jesus Christ was born. So that's when the people were revived. Because, why were they revived? Because the prophecy said, he'll be born from a virgin, and a virgin gave birth at that time, the prophesied time. So this is like the believers in the covenant of Moses were like, wow, this prophecy actually came true. God is real. He has the power to predict the future. And boy, were they just starting to get into it, right? And it also says on the third day he will raise us up. So the third day is after the calendar begins, after Jesus is born. In 30 AD, Jesus began his ministry. So that's in the third day. It says on the third day. Elsewhere is translated as in the third day, he will raise us up. So believing in the promised one is like being raised up in the kingdom of God. This is how the prophet Hosea predicted Jesus, the promised one, will come hundreds of years before Jesus was born. He used it in terms that the dead will come to life and that they will be raised up, that we may live in his sight, that we may live in his sight. Let us know. Let us pursue the knowledge of the Lord. You see, this is the knowledge of the Lord. This is the knowledge that saves. You see, Hosea is the prophet that said, my people die for lack of knowledge. But we don't have to lack knowledge anymore. It's all there. It's all explained right here. His going forth is established as the morning. He will come to us like the rain, like the latter and former rain to the earth. So in one way, the former rain may be Jesus' birth, and the latter rain, 30 AD, when he began his ministry. Now, what are the clouds? Because everyone's expecting Jesus to come and return in a cloud. Well, this explains it right here. O Ephraim, or Israel, what shall I do to you? O Judah, what shall I do to you? For your faithfulness is like a morning cloud. See, that's where it explains it. So it's the faithfulness of Ephraim and Judah. It's their faith. It's like a morning cloud. It's not grounded in teachings of Moses. It had become corrupted and was superstitious, and traditions have been corrupted, and rituals had taken the place of the reality of the covenant. Meaningless rituals have been added onto it. So it says that what is the cloud? What does it represent? It's the faithfulness of the Israelites. It's the faithfulness. It's their faith. It had been corrupted. It says, and like the early dew, it goes away. Therefore I have hewn them by the prophets. I have slain them by the words of my mouth. Hewn them. They cut them in half, these prophets. See, it's the prophets and the priests and the priest class. They're the exponents of the old covenant, the corrupt covenant of the old standard. So this is what slew the Israelites when Jesus came. These old clergy class, they challenged Jesus according to their degraded standards, according to their corrupted standards. It says, "And your judgments are like light that goes forth, for I desire mercy and not sacrifice." This is talking about the new covenant, the covenant of Jesus, mercy, not sacrifice, the covenant of Moses. "And the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings." See, the burnt offerings came to an end when Jesus began distributing the knowledge of God with his ministry. And Jesus used this exact quote here. He quoted this in his ministry when he was dispersing the clouds of the Pharisees and Sadducees that came to him, trying to accuse him of not living up to God's righteous standard. This is explained in the New Testament. Refer to there for more. It says, like men, they transgressed the covenant. Because these Pharisees and Sadducees, they transgressed the covenant. They broke the covenant. And they were rejecting the promised one. They were challenging him by this old standard. They're like robbers. See, it's talking about the priests, the clergy class. So the company of priests murder on the way to Shechem. That's what it's about. Those are the clouds. So now we know what the clouds are. Now we know what Jesus coming down in the clouds is. It doesn't have to be in a spaceship that looks like a cloud. It doesn't have to be like Super Mario Brothers 2. A guy walking on clouds. It doesn't have to be like that. We all know that clouds are vapor today. I don't know if they knew that back then, but we know that today because we can fly around in helicopters and stuff. We know that cloud, like science-based, we know that clouds are vapor. The person will fall right through it. So this is the real cloud that Jesus was talking about. He says, after 2 days, he'll revive us, and in the third day, or on the third day, he'll raise us up. And then he talks about the clouds of the priests, of the Israelites. See, it even says right there. Gives the exact period when Jesus will come. Now let's look at Amos. Amos 9:8. I saw the Lord standing upon the altar. Powerful symbology. Behold, the eyes of the Lord God are upon the sinful kingdom, and I will destroy it from off the face of the earth, saving that I will not utterly destroy the house of Jacob, saith the Lord. What sinful kingdom is that? We have the sinful kingdom of Israel, starting off the 721 BC prophecy, leading to Jesus' birth, Muhammad's birth, and when Muhammad began his public ministry. We have the sinful kingdom of Judah. The seed of the destruction of that is when Manasseh put an idol in the temple, 677 BC. Now that prophecy, combined with Leviticus 26, because it's all about Leviticus 26, points to when Jesus died on the cross, when Muhammad began his ministry, when the Bab began his ministry, and when Baha'u'llah began his ministry. And I go into more detail in my other videos. But that's the 7 times prophecy. in 7 literal times, or 7 times 360 years from 677 BC, takes you to 1844 AD, when the Bab began his ministry. So that was one sinful kingdom being destroyed. Another sinful kingdom being destroyed, well, let's just go over all of them. We have when Christianity became corrupt, and the great, powerful empire of the Christian world, at that time was called the Byzantine Empire, largest kingdom in the world, most wealthy. The capital city housed the emperor, as well as the top Christian political leader, first among equals. When that kingdom was destroyed and conquered, finally, after the seventh attempt in 1453 AD, well, that's the beginning of prophecy, talked about in Ezekiel 4 and elsewhere in Revelations. That was very, very clearly fulfilled and points to 1844 AD as well. I mean, so there's the other sinful kingdom being destroyed. So another sinful kingdom that was destroyed is when the Ottoman Empire came to an end, World War II. I mean, they sided with World War I. Well, eventually, the Ottoman Empire, they sided with the wrong group, and yeah, they were destroyed. So who knows what kind of prophecies are going to be fulfilled with that starting date. So, but these are very, very real, very powerful, profound, significant events. These are the most important events in religious history. These destructions of these cities, because this is the basis of prophecy. But also, even more important than that, is when the promised ones began their ministry, or when they were born. It's even more important. That's even more important. Or the beginning of the calendar of the new religion. That's even more important. But these are the foundations of prophecy, such as the 9/12/60s, the year 1260 AH on the Muslim calendar is 1844 AD, the year of the Bab, when he began his ministry. So let's continue, though, not to digress too far, back to the sinful kingdom being destroyed from off the face of the earth. For lo, I will command, and I will sift the house of Israel among all nations, like as corn is sifted in a sieve, yet shall not the least grain fall upon the earth. So there's your measuring device. This is a symbol. We're talking about measuring prophetic timeline. You got the foundation date when the sinful kingdom is destroyed. Then you use your measurement prophetic timeline using the numbers that Jesus gives for when he's going to return, 1290 and 1335. And, quote, years, which we'll see soon. All the sinners of my people shall die, etc., etc. On that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that has fallen. Let's talk about the return of the promised one, the new covenant beginning. The tabernacle, the temple, is the covenant. It was the covenant of Moses, and it fell. So this is a new covenant that's going to begin. It's just another term for that. I will raise up its ruins. I will build it as in the days of old, that they may possess the remnant of Edom, of all the heathen which are called by my name, saith the Lord that doeth this. Behold, the days come. See, here it is, days, plural. That means times. The plural of day is days. That's 2 360s. That's 720. That's when Jesus will come. So you have, it gives you the anchor date, it gives you the measurement device, the sieve, and it gives you days. It takes you to Jesus. The other days also represents 1290 and 1335. See, this stuff it's just not randomly made up. This is legit. And you get the sweet wine. That means the new wine. That's when Jesus will come. Jesus is the new wine. And so is Muhammad for his age. And so is the Bab for his age. And Baha'u'llah for this age. And many ages to come. Baha'u'llah brings in a whole new day of God. A whole new, his epoch, his era is going to cover many, many ages to come. So there you have it. I will plant them upon their land, and they shall no more be pulled up out of their land. very holy, very sacred, very special. Now, one place we haven't looked at is Habakkuk 3. This is very powerful. I have heard. That means that's the form of Ishmael's name, the forefather of Muhammad, the son of Abraham, who was blessed to have many, many descendants, more than can be counted. Now, a quarter of the world's population today are Muslim. They're spiritual descendants of Ishmael. Prophecy fulfilled. Now, Ishmael's brother Isaac also received a similar blessing to have so many descendants, there are too many to count, like the stars in the sky and the sands on the seashore. A third of the world's population are Christian. Prophecy fulfilled. They were both blessed. I have heard, in particular, this prophecy's about the Ishmael line. So this place called Timon, Mount Paran, it mentions a lot of places like that. Kushan, Midian, these are all in Arabia. That's where Mecca and Medina are. This is, some of these places, this fact may be argued. But there's substantial evidence to support that these places that are mentioned here are all in Arabia. Teman, like the Temanite Jews. It's from Arabia. The Jews that live in Arabia. Mount Paran. That's near Mecca. It says, his praise filled the earth. It's Muhammad's name. His splendor was like the sunrise. Rays flashed from his hand, where his power was hidden. Rays. Elsewhere is translated as horns. The horns came from his hand. That is, and it's talking about it being hidden. So the horn represents kingship, and Muhammad's descendants, the 12 Imams, they were like the kings. After Muhammad passed away, the next head of the people was Ali, and he was the successor, and he had authority like the king, in spiritual authority. So, but this authority was hidden in a way, because most of the Muslims ended up following the usurpers instead. So that's what this is about. The kings came from Muhammad's hand. That is, they weren't descended from his loins. Ali was not like flesh and blood. He wasn't born from the semen that came from Muhammad's penis. He wasn't an actual blood descendant, but he was well known to be his son. He even called him his son. He married him to his daughter, Fatima, and he publicly told the Muslims that, you know, this is his successor. And so it's well known that this man, Ali, was his son, the Imam Ali. So, but this fact apparently is hidden because the majority of the Muslim world doesn't accept the 12 Imams. Okay, so here it says, the plague went before him, pestilence followed his steps. He stood and shook the earth, he looked and made nations tremble. That's a pretty wildly unique translation than the other ones. Most of the other translations say the plague went before him. Yeah, the pestilence went before him. So the plague of Justinian was one of the greatest plagues in history, and one of the first and major greatest pestilences in history. It killed a huge deal of the world's population. That happened like before Muhammad was born. That happened right before he was born. So it went before him. And at his feet went most translations will tell you the lightning went forth, or burning coals went forth from his feet. So that's at the end of the revelation of Islam, right before 1844. Well, 1844, when the Bab made his public proclamation that he's the promised one, at that time, Alexander Graham Bell sent a message over telegraph over long distances saying, "What hath God wrought?" So this is how the lightning went forth at his feet. So let's see what else it says. But he marches on forever. You know, Muhammad marched. He led battles. This is something that Jesus didn't fulfill. This isn't talking about Jesus Christ on the cross. This is talking about someone who led battles and fought pagans and conquered. And that's what Muhammad did. It talks about him, his flying arrows, the flashing spear. In anger, you thresh the nations. Muhammad conquered the nation of, well, the Islam. Islam conquered many nations. At one time, it was the greatest and largest, most expansive empire in the world. You came out to deliver your people, and Muhammad delivered his people from the Meccans, the heathen Meccans that had been attacking him over and over. He defended himself. This is talking about a great warrior, leading battles, conquering nations. That's what Muhammad did, and that's what Islam fulfilled. They fulfilled this prophecy. I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior. See? This is the God of Jesus, the Savior. Savior is related to the name Jesus. So Muhammad worshiped the same God that Jesus did. It doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that Muhammad has a different God than Jesus. They have the same God. This is what Islam teaches. This is what Muhammad teaches. There's so much in Psalm 68. It's about too much to go over right now. Look at my video about Islam, the proofs of Islam, for more on that. But I just want to show you, in particular, (68:19). This is important to get. Praise be to the Lord, to our God, our Savior. This is the God of Jesus here, who daily bears our burdens. Our God is a God who saves. From the sovereign Lord comes escape from death. All right, that's one way of translating it. Seems very interpretive there. We want literal. Literal is best. Okay, Habakkuk 3:2 says, "Revive thy works in the midst of the years." I'm not sure where this translation's going. Where it came from. But according to my notes here, that's what it says. Here we are. In the midst of the years, revive it. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. O Lord, I have heard, again, Ishmael, I have heard the report of you and your work. O Lord, I do fear. In the midst of the years, revive it. And revive God's work. So, what years are that? Well, it's not just any years. It's the years that Jesus points to regarding his return, 1290. So from when Israel's destroyed, you go forward 1290 years, you get Muhammad's birth. At the destruction of Judah, the seed of that destruction, when the abomination was put in the temple, 677 BC, you go forward 1290 years, you get to when Muhammad began his ministry. Then you go forth from that same point, when he began his ministry, you go forth 1290 lunar years, you get when the Bab began his ministry, or public ministry. Public ministry, from Muhammad's public ministry to the Bab's public ministry, 1290. Now if you go from when the Islamic calendar began, you go forward 1260 years, you get to when the Bab's calendar began. You see the relation? So the value 1260 is repeated in the Bible 9 times. And 7 of those are in Revelations, and they're right next to each other, and they're repeated in different variations. The idea of repeating variations is something that's rather common in prophecy. Here's one instance. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. Clothes being the kingdom of Islam. All right, which the sun is a star, so you have the symbol of the star and the moon. That's the symbol of Islam. And look here, lo and behold, she's taken care of for 1260 years. 1260 AD is when the Bab began his ministry. So I'm just going to let that wrap it all up. And this is the greatest proof of all that Jesus Christ is the promised one, and that he actually literally did return 3 days later, whereas a day is an epoch, a yom. So he did fulfill his promise to return in 3 days. And this is the only way that he fulfilled it exactly. And this is the greatest miracle Jesus ever gave. Nobody can prove that he healed anyone. But this miracle here proves that he is the absolute truth based on historical record and evidence and concrete fact that's provable. Look at Ptolemy's Canon of Kings. Provable. To verify the 457 BC date with the 2300 year prophecy of Daniel 8 that points to 1844. In Daniel 7 through 9 and Daniel 12, it gives 1260 as well, which, in 1844, 1260 AH on the Islamic calendar is 1844, and that just verifies that this is, using the Islamic calendar. So it verifies Islam's calendar right there. It verifies the Bab. The Bab basically his whole message was that he's the promised one who came to prepare the people for the coming of Baha'u'llah, who would come in 19 years, in 1863.